Sit down, be humble. What's up? What's good? We are back on the channel today with another banger. In this video, I'll be reviewing Damn by Kendrick Lamar. Now, Damn is the fourth studio album by Kendrick Lamar that dropped in 2017. And whatever name you want to give him, Kendrick Lamar, Kung Fu Kenny, K-Dot, Mr. Morale, The Big Stepper, OK Llama, Drake's dad. Nah, I'm just playing. But whatever name you give him, it doesn't matter. He's one of the greatest rappers of all time, and that's without question. Like, there's no way you can genuinely argue that. So, as a result, any Kendrick album is a pleasure to listen to and review. But specifically, today, Damn is one of my personal favorite albums. So, I'm going to love reviewing this. So, without further ado, let's get into this. First things first, let's start off with the technical ability of Kendrick Lamar on this album. From an ability standpoint, this album is a classic. And it should come as no surprise that Kendrick is one of the greatest lyricists of all time. His pen game is elite. His rhymes are crisp. His entendres are a staple, like double, triple, even quadruple entendres. And the way he's able to craft stories on these records is just insane. Kendrick is genuinely a poet. Like, without any glaze, he is one of the best lyricists of all time. So, obviously, that's going to be an amazing feature on this album, right? And then along with the lyricism, you also get into the flow. The flow is unique on each and every song. It doesn't sound the same. It's not repetitive. And as a result, the flow is also great. Then we get to the production. The production's also amazing. I feel like the production really enhances what Kendrick's trying to say on these songs, and it just adds another layer to the songs. And then finally, we get to the features. The features are amazing. Like, Zacari did great on Love, Rihanna did great on Loyalty, U2 did amazing on XXX, so all the features were great. So anything you want to say from a technical standpoint, this album is a banger. Next, we'll delve into the quality of the album. Now, from an album quality standpoint, this album is a classic. There's zero skips. The worst song on the album is Blood, and even then, it's a really good song. And the only reason I put Blood as the worst song is because it's the shortest song, it's like the intro track, and it just tries to set up the rest of the album, which it does amazingly, right? Like, it sets up the rest of the album's concept and the meaning of the album, right? So Blood is a great song in itself, and that's the worst song on the album. The rest of the album is full of bangers. You obviously have the hits, right? Like DNA, like Humble, like Love, and Loyalty. But you also have like your underrated masterpieces, like Feel, Fear, and God. And personally, I think my top 3 songs on the album are Feel, Duckworth, and Fear. Again, it's hard to pick 3 songs out of like everything because there's so many really good songs, but those are my top 3. Next, we'll delve into the concept of the album. Now, before I start with the concept, I'll tell you this. This, in my opinion, is the best concept an album has ever done. And I know it's a bold statement to make, but it's incredible. And after you listen to my explanation of the concept, I think you're going to be likely to agree that if not the best concept, it's at least one of the best concepts ever done. So let's get into it. First things first, I'll delve into what the overall like theme, I guess, of the album is, right? It's this theme of wickedness versus weakness. And I'll explain what those mean in a little bit. So what happens is, if you listen to this album from the first track of Blood all the way down to the last track of Duckworth, so from start to finish or top to bottom, you get this one story. And that story is one of weakness. If you listen from the last track of Duckworth to the first track of Blood, you get a completely different story. And that's the story of wickedness. And I'll explain again what those mean. So what happens is these tracks end up coming in pairs. Pairs of wickedness and pairs of weakness, right? So a good way to think of this is the odd number tracks are tracks of wickedness, while the even number tracks are tracks of weakness. So, for example, Blood is the first track, that's a track of wickedness. DNA is the second track, it's a track of weakness. Yah is the third track, track of wickedness. Element is the fourth track, a track of weakness. So you can clearly see there's a correlation between being an odd number track and being a wicked track, and an even number track and being a weak track, right? And essentially, what this wickedness and weakness means is that the wickedness that Kendrick is talking about is all the problems that he's enduring and that he's going through because of his fame, right? So problems like money, woman, fame, the lavish lifestyle. So all of those problems that he described in To Pimp a Butterfly come back here, and he highlights them in this wickedness type of storyline, right? But in the weakness themes, he essentially delves into things about himself that are good qualities and good character traits to have, right? So, like for example, DNA just means he has knowledge, right? Loyalty, love, being humble, things like that, right? So that's essentially the main message or theme of the album, right? And Kendrick goes through this period of being wicked, but also shows moments of weakness, right? So essentially, both of these tracks go hand in hand and show the duality of man. And because of that, this storyline is very well executed, right? Like the concept is very well executed. Now let's get into the actual storyline itself, right? It's fire. Let's start off with the weakness storyline. So this starts off with Blood first, right? And in Blood, Kendrick is trying to help this blind woman because he's trying to help her. She looks like she's trying to look for something, and he helps her. And he gets shot because of it. So, in my opinion, I think the blind woman represents what happens if you continue down a wicked path, right? And what happens is you eventually become damned. You'll die, and you won't be redeemed, right? And then the rest of the album then kind of plays out in that tone, where Kendrick ends up having, again, moments of wickedness, but also moments of redemption in his weakness. So, like, with arrogance comes loyalty, with pride comes humbleness, and with lust comes love. So, with each passing song, you see that Kendrick flip-flops, right? You don't know if he's going to go down the wickedness path. You don't know if he's going to go down the weakness path, right? But then you get to Duckworth, right? And in Duckworth, Kendrick essentially realizes that he's living a wicked lifestyle, right? And because of that, he becomes weak, submits to God, and then gets his redemption. He still gets shot in the end, but he has his redemption before he gets shot. And this redemption essentially happens because of one main reason. And it's because of the true real life story that Kendrick talks about and crafts a masterpiece around in Duckworth. So in Duckworth, Kendrick talks about how his father, whose name is Kenny, but his nickname was Ducky, hence the name Duckworth, worked at this KFC when he was growing up. When Kendrick was growing up, actually, but Kendrick's father worked at a KFC, right? And Anthony, who was the founder of Top Dog Entertainment, or TDE, which was Kendrick's label for the longest time, was a big gangster at the time in Compton. And because of that, he was going around robbing people, shooting people, spending time in jail. And Ducky knew this, right? And specifically, Anthony was known to rob and kill people at that KFC that Ducky was working at. So as a result, Ducky decided to be nice to him. He decided to give Anthony free chicken, extra biscuits, and it worked out because Ducky survived, Anthony never killed him. And this is important for the story. Because essentially what Kendrick is showing is that since his father was alive, Kendrick was able to get redeemed in the end. He was able to be taught right from wrong, and his father could show him the ways of life and how to live a good life. As a result, Kendrick gets redeemed. But in the wickedness storyline, we start off with Duckworth, right? And in Duckworth, Ducky actually dies this time because Anthony shoots him and kills him because Ducky doesn't do the nice things that he did to Anthony and doesn't help him out like he did before. As a result, Kendrick has no dad. And without a father figure to lead him down the path of being good or being evil, Kendrick dies without any redemption. He continues down the similar path that was shown in the weakness storyline, where he has moments of wickedness and moments of weakness. But once he gets to blood, while he's trying to show some weakness, Kendrick gets shot. There's no redemption because he has no father to tell him right from wrong. And as a result, there's no redemption, right? Like that's what I'm saying. The redemption is what separates these two storylines. Like the storylines are very similar. They both start and end with gunshots. But in the wickedness storyline, he doesn't get his redemption. While in the weakness storyline, he gets his redemption at the end. I think this is like pretty important because it essentially talks about like Kendrick in real life, kind of in a way, right? Like obviously he didn't physically die now, but if he continued down that path of wickedness that he was foreshadowing in this album, it's very likely that he could have died, and he would have died a polarizing figure, someone that contributed so much good to this world in the form of his art and storytelling and his music, but was also living a lavish lifestyle and never really preached what he didn't do, essentially, right? Like he'd be a false preacher, quote unquote. While the weakness storyline kind of shows what has been happening with Kendrick, right? Like obviously he didn't die yet, but he's essentially a redeemed figure of sorts. He's a redeemed hero, right? Like he follows what he preaches. He essentially has this message that he's willing to tell people. He produces great music, and his music actually matters. So I think it's a really cool theme and a really cool concept that Kendrick is able to execute brilliantly on this album. And as a result, that's why I think this is the greatest concept of all time. And I understand there's some other really amazing concepts, even by Kendrick, on like To Pimp a Butterfly, but I think this takes the cake. And again, it's hard to say whether this is better than To Pimp a Butterfly, but we'll get to that in a little bit. With all that rambling aside, this album, from a conceptual standpoint, is a classic. Now, let's compare Damn to the rest of Kendrick's discography. Damn is essentially the culmination of a trilogy of sorts, of Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, and then obviously Damn. In Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick talks about all the problems he had as a good kid that was growing up in the struggles and the troubles of a very bad city, you know? While in To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick's becoming a rising star, right? Like he has dreams of becoming a rapper and he achieves that, but then realizes that he needs to support the city that he was from and help out with all the struggles and issues that are happening with it. So he goes back, writes music, and does stuff to increase awareness and help with his city. And then we get to Damn. And obviously I told you about the concept of Damn and the whole storyline. So I feel like it kind of finishes like the narrative arc that was started with Good Kid, Mad City. And it needed to be perfect, and I think it just was. It was amazing. Just a masterpiece of an album. And you can call it lazy, you can call it whatever you want, but this, in my opinion, is Kendrick's best album. It's a 10 out of 10, and it's, in my opinion, one of the best rap albums, if not maybe the best rap album of all time. Like, it's that good. And I understand people are going to say, like, To Pimp a Butterfly is better, and that's a reasonable take. Like, TPAB is also a classic, right? It's not an egregious take to say that TPAB is his best album. It's just, I think this concept is just so unique that I'll have to give it the slight edge over TPAB. But I understand if you give TPAB the edge. But either way, this album is a banger. That's all we have for today. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Do you agree with my take? Do you think Damn is overrated, underrated? Just let me know what y'all think. It's an open community. Put your feedback down below. And also, I have this new exciting series I'm going to start. And I'm going to start it off as like something that's at the end of each like album review. I might change that, might just make it its own video at a certain point, but I'll be doing this thing called Song of the Week. And It's just basically like each week I pick my favorite song, give like an honorable mention, and also give like an album of the week, right? So like any album that dropped recently that like I really enjoyed. So it's pretty simple to understand. I'll just give my song of the week now. But for this week, my song of the week was Summer Drop by Corday featuring Anderson .Paak and with production from J. Cole. This song is just beautiful. It flows so well. Corday spazzes on this, Anderson .Paak spazzes on this. The Cole production is heavenly. Like, it's just a beautiful song, you know? Just a nice summer vibe that, I mean, it's not really summer now, but you know what I mean? It's a really nice summer vibe. The song's great. Lyricism, production, flow, whatever it is, beautiful. So I think that's easily my song of the week. But I think an honorable mention has to go to Her by Jake. And Jake is personally one of my favorite like pop artists right now. Eventually we'll do a review of his album because I love that album. But I think Her was a really nice take. It wasn't really like the same as his previous music. Like obviously it's kind of grounded in the same things, but I think he went in a new direction with it, which was really cool to see. And I think it was really great. Now for the album of the week. I think it's gotta be Better Me Than You than by Big Sean, right? Like there's not many really high quality albums that dropped last week. Destroy Lonely's album wasn't all there in my opinion, but I think Better Me Than You was a good album. It wasn't elite, it wasn't like album of the year, but it was still a really good album by Big Sean, and he's honestly been super underrated recently. Like whenever he drops a single, something big just overshadows him for some reason, but this was a quality album. But yeah, again, that's all we have for today. Let me know what y'all think about my songs of the week. Do you agree with them? Do you think any other song was better? Also, same thing with the album of the week. Did you like Big Sean's album? Did you not? Whatever it is, let me know down below. Peace.